What's going on, guys? This is part 2 of my pine snake enclosure build. If you haven't seen part 1, go back and check that. That covers all the hardscape and the design of the enclosure, and in this video we are going to fit the electrics and talk about all the finishing touches. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the UVB that we are going to be providing in this enclosure. And for this one, I'm using what I normally use in all my 5-foot vivariums. This is a 24 watt Arcadia Pro T5 kit, fitted with a 6% lamp. To me, that's a kind of a good all-rounder lamp for some of these sort of forest species, things that aren't necessarily getting tons and tons of radiation all the time. So this is my weapon of choice. So we're going to go ahead and fit that one. Okay, so what I've done here is fitted my UVB on one of these beams that I've got along, which is supporting the enclosure above me. This is fitted towards the heat end. So what we're creating here is a gradient of UVB radiation. So if my pine snake wants to bask up on here, up on these logs in full sunlight, he is going to be naturally receiving a lot of UVB radiation. If he wants to hide away in the dark corners, he can do so, because we're not lighting, we're not putting all this sunlight, all this radiation over here. So he's got a way to escape from it all. So he's got the opportunity to work out where he wants to sit, where he wants to bask, how he wants to receive all that radiation throughout the day. So what we do is we don't light the enclosure the full way along. As I said, this is a 6-foot enclosure, and these are 550 mil, so 2 foot ish tubes, nice and strong with the T5. So we've got a really nice light coming down, coupled with a UVB. That's going to be really cool. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly hook up the electrics for it, and we'll come back to you. Okay, so next up is a heat lamp. More importantly, a UVA lamp. Okay, so I started out with a deep heat projector. In my mind, there isn't much wrong with a deep heat projector, but I thought I could do a little bit better. And what I ended up trying was I brought some Basking Lamps from Reptile systems, and I brought a whole array of wattages. So I've got 100 watt, 75 watt and 60 watt, and I put them on full power just to see what I would get when I started measuring temperatures around, up here being the highest, and here all the way down to, these sort of areas down here. And I had a few different ways of measuring that. I can measure it with a probe just sitting on there. I can measure surface temperature. The idea here is to just get a broad kind of knowledge as to what sort of heat we're going to be getting here. And the idea that I had for this is to be able to run a lamp at near enough full power for the entirety of the day. To me, it's the most natural way we can heat our reptiles. I'm lucky that this is such a large enclosure. I can do that with a smaller enclosure, it's going to take a lot more testing, a lot more of a maybe a different approach as well as to how how you go about heating an animal and lighting an animal in such a way. And there's loads of videos online that are going to cover this in far more detail than me. But basically what my theory is for this is I want to be able to have this lamp on most of the time. I'm going to use my thermostat probe, which is just a dimmer stat up here. I've got it mounted up here, just a dimmer stat. And I'm going to mount the probe further down there. I haven't fixed it to the wall yet because that all went in before I did the hardscape, so I didn't know exactly where my floor level was going to be, what I would be hiding the probe behind and stuff like that. But what I'm going to end up doing now is tucking that probe behind that slate there, and instead of measuring directly beneath this and controlling this, I'm going to use my thermostat as a safety precaution. And basically, if anything happens in the reptile room, it gets super hot one day, that will help me to be able to, you know, control the temperature inside here, and it will dim the light. And you know, Mr. Pine, my pine snake, isn't going to overheat. There isn't a potential there to overheat. But because I've played about with my different wattage lamps, I know that I can run a 100-watt heat lamp up there, and I can create a whole flood of UVA radiation in this area almost all day, all the time, and I'm not sacrificing any of the light coming out of this lamp. I'm not sacrificing that. I'm not going to lose that if the vivarium gets up to a temperature and then has to turn off. So you can do that at home. You can play about with different wattage lamps. That's what I've always done. I've always tried to keep lamps on as much as possible rather than just having it on for 5 minutes, vivarium's up to temperature, turn the lamp off, turn the lamp on in another half an hour's time, turn the lamp off. You know, it's not as natural for them. And yeah, so that's the way I do it. There's more ways to do it, and there's a lot more better videos explaining that online, but that's the way I am approaching this. So that lamp's on most of the time, full power. So I'm going to run this thermostat probe down to there, going to set my temperature back up to where I've had it, and that's the heating done. And the last thing I've done here is just add a little computer fan that acts as an extraction fan. So that's mounted in a way that it's blowing air out of the enclosure through one of the vents, and that just gives us a little bit of air extraction. It's actually mounted on the cool side, so it's going to help pull any of that hot air out of this side as well, which aids for that thermal gradient that we're after. Okay, so UVB, UVA, we've got our visible light plumbed in as well. We'll take some final temperature readings, make sure everything's running nicely. We've got his water bowl thrown in there. Sphagnum moss in the hide box. We'll keep that coolish. We'll keep that cool. Not mega damp, but we'll just throw some sphagnum moss in there. And I think we're ready to add Mr. Pine, which is cool.